Life is not fully understood when it begins, or even when it succeeds, but only when it nears completion. The Life Cycle Completed is Erik Erikson's final and reflective work, expanding upon his famous theory of the 8 stages of psychosocial development. In this book, Erikson views human life as a continuous journey of identity formation, with special emphasis on the meaning of old age. Rather than treating development as something that ends in adulthood, Erikson argues that psychological growth continues throughout the entire lifespan. Life as a continuous process of becoming. According to Erikson, each stage of life presents a fundamental psychological challenge. Unresolved conflicts from earlier stages shape later development, meaning that growth is cumulative, not compartmentalized. The book asks a critical question: have we truly developed, or have we merely aged? The final stage. Ego integrity versus despair. The heart of this book lies in its treatment of old age. Ego integrity. Accepting one's life as meaningful and coherent, including both successes and failures. Despair. Being trapped in regret, wishing life could be lived over again. Old age is not simply decline, it is the final opportunity to integrate one's entire life into a meaningful whole. Wisdom as reconciliation. For Erikson, wisdom is not intelligence or knowledge. It is the ability to reconcile with life's imperfections, limitations, and uncertainties. Wisdom means making peace with the past, accepting failure without denial, viewing life as a complete narrative. Naptashtar individual lives within history. Erikson emphasizes that personal identity is always shaped by historical and social context. Wars, cultural norms, economic systems, and political climates deeply influence individual development. To understand a person, we must understand the era in which they lived. What it means to complete a life completion does not mean perfection. It means coherence. A completed life is one in which experiences, good and bad, are woven into a meaningful story. Erikson concludes with a profound idea. Life can only be understood backward, but it must be lived forward. The Life Cycle Completed is not merely a psychological text, it is a philosophical meditation on aging, meaning, and human wholeness. Next, we'll explore how Erikson's life cycle perspective can guide our present choices and shape the way we age.
Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're going to dive into this incredible psychological map that charts our entire lives, literally from our first breath to our last. It comes from a psychologist named Erik Erikson, and honestly, it might just totally change how you look at your own life story.
Okay, let's kick this off with the question. Ever feel like life is just a series of levels you've got to unlock? You know, each one with its own boss battle and its own special reward? It's a pretty common feeling, right? This sense that we're always moving through these distinct chapters, constantly leveling up.
You know, this idea isn't exactly new. Way back, Shakespeare famously described the 7 ages of man. It's beautiful, it's poetic, for sure. But what if there was a psychological version of that map? One that gives us a much deeper look at the internal battles we're fighting at every age. And that's exactly where the psychologist Erik Erikson comes in. He had this, groundbreaking idea that our personality isn't just locked in when we're kids. Nope, he said it keeps developing our entire lives. And he believed this whole journey is shaped by a series of social challenges, or crises, that we have to get through to keep growing.
So, to really get what makes Erikson such a big deal, you kind of have to put him side by side with his famous predecessor, Sigmund Freud. Now, Freud was all about these internal, instinctual drives, the id, and he thought most of the action happened in childhood. But Erikson, he completely shifted the focus. He looked at our social world and how our sense of self, our ego, deals with all these external challenges. And this is key, he saw it as a lifelong journey, not something that's over and done with by the time you're a teenager.
Okay, so the absolute core of his theory is this thing called the epigenetic principle. Now, I know it sounds super academic, but the idea behind it is actually really simple and kind of beautiful. Think of it like this. Each stage of our development pops up at just the right time and builds directly on top of the stage that came before it. Just like building a house, you need a solid foundation before you can put up the walls.
All right, so where do we start? Let's go right back to the beginning, to those foundation years that set the stage for everything else.
So picture this. From the moment we're born up to about a year old, we're already facing our first huge crisis, trust versus mistrust. The big question really is, can I count on the world?
If our caregivers are there for us, we learn to trust. But if they're not, we start to develop this sense of mistrust that can really stick with us.
And if we get through this, if we learn to trust, we gain our first incredible virtue, hope. And we're not talking about just wishful thinking here. This is a deep, fundamental belief that even when things get tough, there are good people and good things in the world we can rely on. All right, so moving on, as toddlers, we hit the next crisis, autonomy versus shame and doubt. This is that classic I can do it myself stage, right? Developing that sense of personal control is everything. Then a little later in the preschool years, the challenge shifts again, this time to initiative versus guilt, where we start making up games and trying to lead the pack.
And getting through these two stages gives us two more essential building blocks. From autonomy, we get will. That's the belief that, hey, I can make my own choices. And from initiative, we get purpose, the courage to dream up goals and actually go after them without feeling crushed by guilt.
Okay, so from about age 6 all the way up to puberty, our world kind of shifts. The main stage is now school, and the crisis here is what Erikson called industry versus inferiority. It's all about keeping up with new schoolwork and social stuff. If we do well, we feel productive. If we struggle, we can start feeling like we're just not good enough.
And when we manage to do that, when we succeed, we build this amazing virtue, competence. It's that core belief in ourself, that feeling that I can learn this, I can do this. It's basically the engine for everything we achieve later on.
All right, now we're getting to what might be the most famous stage in Erikson's whole theory. I mean, this is the big one. It's the one that defines those wild, confusing, but also amazing teenage years, where we face the biggest question of our lives so far.
So during our teenage years, we're wrestling with identity versus role confusion. The question that's just screaming in our heads is, who am I? Where am I going? We try on all these different hats, different beliefs, different friend groups, trying to stitch together a solid sense of self from all the possibilities.
And when we finally navigate that maze, we come out with this incredible virtue, fidelity. And this isn't just about being loyal to other people. It's about being loyal to yourself, being true to who you are and what you believe in, no matter what the world throws at you.
But here's the thing. The journey is far from over. Erikson's big point was that we keep developing our whole lives. Adulthood brings a whole new set of challenges that shift our focus from just me to us and our place in the world.
So in young adulthood, the big crisis is intimacy versus isolation. It's all about whether we can build those deep, committed relationships. Then, as we move into middle adulthood, we face generativity versus stagnation. The question becomes, am I making my life count? Are we contributing something that will outlast us?
And getting these stages right, well, it helps us develop two of the most profoundly human virtues. Through intimacy, we learn what love really is, the ability to truly connect our identity with someone else's. And through generativity, we cultivate care, this bigger sense of responsibility for guiding the next generation.
Okay, let's look at the final chapters of this map. This is where the journey really turns inward. It's about reflection, looking back, and there's actually a really surprising twist to the theory here.
So, in late adulthood, we hit the final crisis in Erikson's original 8-stage model, integrity versus despair. You're looking back on your whole life and asking, did it mean something? Was it a good life? If you feel it was, you have integrity. If not, you're left with despair. And from that integrity, you gain the incredible virtue of wisdom.
But what does integrity even mean here? Well, Erikson's wife and collaborator, Joan Erikson, had this absolutely brilliant take on it. She pointed out that the word integrity actually shares a root with words like contact and tangible. So it's not some lofty, abstract idea. It's a real, tangible, day-to-day connection with the world and the people in it. I love that.
But the story doesn't end there. After Erik passed away, Joan lived well into her 90s, and she realized something. The map was missing a chapter. She saw the unique struggles of the old and actually proposed a 9th stage, a final chapter that came from her own life experience.
And this 9th stage is just wow. It's like all the earlier crises come back around, but through a totally new lens. As we get older and more dependent, we have to face trust again in our caregivers. As our bodies change, we have to rethink our autonomy. And as our old roles fade away, we're back to asking, who am I now? The takeaway here is so powerful. Our growth is never really finished. We're always adapting, always finding new meaning.
So what Erikson gave us is this incredible map for the human journey. It shows us that at every single age, there's a vital task, a chance for growth,
It's not a strict timeline, of course, but it's a powerful way to understand our own stories. Which leaves us with one final thought, really a question for you. Looking at this map, where do you see yourself right now? What's the challenge you're working on today?